All the time, I turn on the news, and there's always this talk about the Islamic State, ISIS. It's always this outright fear-mongering, just trying to strike fear into the hearts of its viewers. When one time on CNN, I saw the headline, and it was "How to Stop ISIS from Recruiting Your Kids." And it was simply amazing. I was so shocked at the level of fear that was trying to be created when the media and all of these politicians talk about ISIS. Now, of course, ISIS is a brutal organization. It beheads innocent people. It acts with unspeakable barbarism. ISIS, I get it. It's a terrible, terrible group of people. However, what annoys me is that when the media and these politicians talk about ISIS, they discuss this issue as if there is no other option than sacrificing the lives of our brave young men and women and creating even more chaos in that region of the world in order to take this group down. And what they are purposefully doing is ignoring that the U.S. trying to fight ISIS is counterproductive to actually destroying this organization. And you have to look back to the history of this region and our history in the region to fully grasp what I'm saying. So Iraq is a nation that wasn't even a nation back prior to the world wars. It was the Kurdish people in the north, the Shiites in the central region, and the Sunnis in the south. These are three groups that simply despise each other, but stayed separate of each other to refrain from fighting. However, after the world wars, the West decided to mush these three groups into a country. So now these three ethnic groups that have had beef since ancient times, they are now face to face with each other. And from that point on, right until about the late 1970s, Iraq was in complete and utter chaos. But then Saddam Hussein grabs power right around 1980. And of course he was a dictator. Of course he had human rights violations on a list going right to the floor. But there are two things that I can really credit Saddam Hussein for. He brought Iraq out of abject poverty, created a respectable middle class in that country, and he united that nation to end the cycle of chaos. And that was until about the Gulf War, a decade of prosperity in Iraq. And that was when he invaded Kuwait to try and expand Iraq's oil supply. And the U.S. could not have Saddam Hussein in control of that much oil because, let's think of a reason. We don't like him? Yes, that's how ridiculous the Gulf War was. However, the aftermath of the Gulf War was even more ridiculous. So after the United States won the Gulf War and pushed the Iraqis out of Kuwait, they continued to blame Saddam Hussein for an assortment of reasons. And one was the fact that he had chemical weapons. Saddam cooperated with the United States' demands to get rid of the weapons, and at about a year after the war, it was clear to the rest of the world that Saddam Hussein had no chemical weapons. Except to the United States. We started a series of extremely harsh sanctions on Iraq, and by the start of the 2000s, the per capita GDP, the GDP divided by the population, was 1/10 of what it was before the Gulf War. The economy was destroyed, and then you go on to 2003, and the United States goes into Iraq yet again for absolutely no reason, and this time was the backbreaker for Iraq. We slaughtered 200,000 innocent civilians and killed the person that was keeping Iraq united and out of complete chaos. So after the second Iraq invasion, the U.S. is responsible for the two biggest factors that ISIS needed to become more prominent. They needed a reason for hate, a reason for these people to act with this brutality. And there you go. The United States has destroyed your country and killed your people, and of course you want revenge, and ISIS provides that opportunity. And then next, they needed an open field in order to go on their reign of terror, and we provided that as well. Let's face it, if Saddam Hussein and his regime were still in office, ISIS would have been destroyed before an afternoon snack. We essentially created ISIS by going into Iraq. So if our strategy is to destroy ISIS, is to go into Iraq yet again, that is a very counterproductive strategy. If we really want to combat ISIS, let the countries that are actually in the region deal with their own problems, okay? ISIS is surrounded. They're fighting with the Syrian government to the west. You have Turkey, one of the largest militaries in the world, to the north. You have Iran to the east, and another one of the largest militaries in the world, the Saudis, to the south. They're walled in with nowhere to go. This threat can be minimized, but only if the U.S. would stop butting itself into the middle of this region's affairs. When you clicked on this video, the strategy of doing nothing may have sounded crazy. However, hopefully by now you all understand why I feel doing nothing is the best strategy in this situation. Peace, no beef.